let's do the perfect book tag. This was created by reading this life, apparently inspired by someone called Criminoli, and I was tagged by my friend Jeff Reeds. And this is a tag, I guess, about trying to talk about what you like in terms of how books are made or how they're set out. It's a media rather than content, or medium rather than content tag. And it's interesting. I definitely I think about some of the questions. There's only 7 questions or 8, but definitely others I hadn't thought of or don't think of much at least. So I've got some books here, not so much for this is my favourite book, but for explaining some of the qualities that come up. What format is your favourite book? Hardback, paperback, or even e-format? I do read e-books, but certainly not my favourite format. I like sitting down having something. Probably it's paperbacks. Just the sort of ease and weight and so on is convenient. But there is something to be said for there's something satisfying about a heavy hardback and feeling the weight and the texture in your hands. But I think the convenience, the paperback, probably. About how many pages is your perfect book? Are you particular as to where the chapters begin? That's the same question, but they seem like different questions to me. The chapter thing, I think Jeff made the example of basically, he saw this as a white space question, and yeah, I think white space is good. I don't know if I have a book here which completely fails to chapter distinguish. That does too. Basically, I think the standard expectation that you have chapter headings which are at the head of a page is good and superior to. So someone who doesn't do that, who I read a lot of, is Pratchett. Bouchard is half guilty because she often has chapters, but she has very long, or can have, not always, very long chapters, or comparatively long chapters, which you end up realising you're splitting a sub-chapter just via a random break in the middle of the page. But Pratchett doesn't do chapters, generally speaking, in his Discworld books or his adult books in general. And I think that's something which is a small downside. But it's basically because there's no... He wants a very flexible format, and that's why you sometimes have odd chapter decisions, but generally I prefer that. Chapter headings. How many pages? How long is a piece of string? Let's say 300. 300 or 400. Say Legend is 400. So is Assassin's Apprentice, which I have here. Dawn Shard is 200. I think 300 to 400 is a good length for like I want to sit down and enjoy a book over a number of days. Something like a good example of something quite different would be say Edgar Rice Burroughs, your Tarzan stuff, or many. This is Agatha Christie, the 13 Problems, the Miss Marvel short story collection. Miss Marple. That's 192 pages in this light paperback edition. That's one thing with the paperback thing is, though I do have, say that's actually technically mass market paperback sized, but obviously in Britain we don't have the construction distinction really between mass market and trade. You get all kinds of size of paperback, but you don't really get that distinction between mass market and trade. To go back to the previous question. So for length 300, it's enough to get into. Sometimes it's nice to have a small bite. I guess I do like long books. Sometimes I don't necessarily read many 1,000-page books anymore or ever really, but certainly it has to be something I know I'm going to enjoy enough to justify. And so reading Hobbes' Farseer trilogy, I was more willing to put up with Assassin's Quest being 800 pages because I'd enjoyed the previous 2 books, but it definitely was at the top end of what I might be able to cope with for a single book. Then again, on the other hand, sometimes there'll be things like a trilogy of 200-page books that I'll say, The Faded Sun, I read this year, is a good example of that. I'll be finishing the Arrows trilogy by Mercedes Lackey. That feels different. It feels like you're making progress. So there is a psychological thing here where some of the length issue is not, it's just too long. But there needs to be a sense of completion and ability to say, I've done something, I've accomplished something. Question 3, are you particular as to where the page numbers are located? I prefer them on the page, traditionally. I mean, that's in the bottom. That's in the top. I guess I'm kind of used to top right hand, top left hand at this point. That's at the bottom. Yeah, wherever. Favourite font? No, don't care really, as long as it's readable. I think Jeff gave the example of some Salvatore books he has where the font basically isn't readable, which does seem like a problem. I don't think I've ever read a book, like a major book that's been like that. It says, oh, do you find out the details if possible? It is interesting to me. I definitely have some, I think this might be one actually, some publishers which I end up learning about because the colophon, might be a back colophon often, has font details on. So for instance, this book literally very helpfully tells you it's the colophon, and then it says it's printed on £70 long fibre acid-free paper, especially developed by the S.D. Warren Company to meet the historical document standards of the United States National Historical Publications and Records Commission. The Palatino typeface used in this volume is the work of Hermann Zapf, the noted European type designer and master calligrapher. Palatino is basically an old-style letter form. It has serifs, yet strongly endowed with the Zapf distinction of exquisiteness, with concern not solely for the individual letter, but also the working visual relationship in a page of text. Zapf's edged pen has given this type a brisk natural motion. I find that interesting. I don't ever think about it unless it's there. You know, it doesn't come up into my mind. Do margins matter to you? As long as there is one. I think, again, a bit like the chapter thing, white space is good. You want enough margins so that you can see the start of, particularly the start of sentences. But again, I think the difference between, you know, what might be, that one's a 1/4 inch and that one's a 1/2 inch margin, I probably don't notice that much. You get some books where the margin is much too big. That's about the only thing I do observe, is you occasionally read a book, not really typically fiction, but sometimes in non-fiction, where you realise the margin is enormously wasteful. Does your perfect book, this is question 6, have any other unique features that make it perfect? I really like well-made hardbacks. I've got a couple of examples here. This is a single volume of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Gibbon in the Folio Society, which just, you know, it might be 20 years old or so, but just is stitch bound and has these slightly marbled, I think that, are they marbled vellum or are they something else? In terms of the covers, elephant hide apparently, but that is not actually elephant hide. But yeah, that printing was 2003, so they're 19 years old, yeah. And just the good weight paper. It's the same with this. This is Liberty Classics, which is the same thing as Liberty Fund for Political Philosophy. Readers from Prairie View A&M University Libraries, ex libris, but with one of those side labels that's essentially impossible to get off. So you don't do it because it might damage something else. But here you've got these really nice end papers with, it's like Sumerian for something. I don't know, I forget what it's for. And yeah, this one actually has a bookmark too, but just well-made hardbacks with, in this case, it's also got that kind of thing where you've got the spine binding and then you have like a decorative outer cover, which is this tortoiseshell. I don't know what material it is necessarily. I don't know if it says here. But yeah, I like that. I like there's something luxuriant about them, and so they're a special category. Not so much that I'm like, oh, they're the only books I want to read. I want to read lots of little paperbacks, but having well-made hardbacks is a sensory pleasure, isn't it? And question 7: show us the cover. What do you find perfect about it? Well, there's not one book here. Again, there's not one perfect book where I say, Arator by John Taylor, the perfect book for all these reasons. I guess you could do that. I just think it's more fun to go around the houses a bit. Yes, what do I like about covers? These actually are all represent things I can like about covers. I like clean or simple designs. I don't mind them being stylized. Stylized is not the opposite of clean. It's not the negative of clean. Clean, I think, is the opposite of busy or complicated. So it's no criticism really intended of, say, Darryl Sweet. I think is a great painter, but I definitely disprefer that kind of cover. Not because I don't like the paintings. I'm like, oh man, that looks nice, but I think I prefer. I mean, I've constantly got a D&D book. D&D books typically have some kind of full painting, don't they? And that's kind of fun, and I don't mind it in that format. But yeah, that's not my preferred style of cover. My preferred style is clean. So, for instance, I got Legend. It's just an axe. Quite simple text design. Dawn Shard by Sanderson in the UK cover, with a shiny, glossy cover actually, with the gold picked out. And this is stylized, but it's very clean. Again, you've got more or less a single element. And for Sanderson, that's often a person, which makes it more complex. But you're basically a single element with a few supporting elements. Robin Hobb, Assassin's Apprentice. You have the illumination of the A. You have the buck, and that's it. And then you have a slightly stylized, and busy stylized font, but it's the only thing. So the things you notice are that and the stylized font, and then you've got this kind of vellum paper manuscript kind of background. And the hardbacks actually aren't bad examples too. Arator is, I don't love this one as much, but it's got a simple, like engraved. You might not be able to see this. Yeah, I think you can. You won't be able to see it very well. And an engraved depiction of a spade in soil, and there's a harrow there as well. Otherwise, it's just this tall shell thing. That's not my favourite, but I think the idea of a simple thing, or here, just blank. There's a lot to be said for something that is spine only. In this case, it's because it goes in a box, which is over there. But I think the idea that you don't need to do very much, and you can advertise here with these very clean colours. Just there's the series name, you've got the volume number, and you've got the volume name there, and then the publisher there, and the author there. Like, I think that's an incredibly neat, nice design. So yeah, that's me. You can tag yourself if you like. It's interesting to think about why we like physical media. Basically, I think that's this has helped me have a think about that. So I'd love to, even if you don't want to do the tag or anything, just give me some of your preferred physical media preferences for books in the comments. Till next time.